him up with ease and then some.
André the Giant is one of those rare names where you do not even need a last name. You just see the silhouette in your mind. A 7-foot superstar filling entire arenas with his presence, then turning around and stealing scenes as the gentle Fezzik in The Princess Bride. From a tiny French village to WrestleMania, from cramped airplane seats to sold-out stadiums, André lived a life that was epic and heartbreaking at the same time. In today's video, we are going to walk through his entire journey. The childhood, the rise, the pain, the fame, and the final night in Paris that still haunts wrestling history. But before we dive into the content, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but to us it means a lot. Thanks. Now, without much ado, let's begin. Early life and family. André the Giant's story starts in a place you probably would not expect a global icon to come from. He was born André René Roussimoff on the 19th of May, 1946, in Coulommiers, a town in the Seine-et-Marne region of France. His parents, Boris and Marianne, were of Bulgarian and Polish descent and worked on rural land near the village of Moulins, raising André and his siblings in a simple countryside setting. André grew up as the middle child of 5, with 2 older and 2 younger siblings, all of them average-sized next to the boy who would one day be called the 8th wonder of the world. He was a heavy baby, and a child who was a good head taller than other kids, with huge hands and feet. Doctors had not yet put a label on it, but he was already showing signs of pituitary gigantism caused by excess growth hormone. This condition would later be described as acromegaly and explain his extraordinary size. You do not remember the first time you saw André. You just remember realizing people could actually be that big. Then you have the strange little incident that feels like it belongs in a movie. The Roussimoff family's neighbor in rural France was the famous Irish playwright Samuel Beckett. Beckett would occasionally give him a ride to school simply because he lived nearby. The later idea that Beckett drove him because André couldn't fit on the school bus is a myth that grew over time. The making of a giant. By age 12, he was already 6 feet 3 and weighed more than 200 pounds. That is not just tall kid territory, that is the size of a professional athlete still sitting in a village classroom. On the farm, his size became raw horsepower. André could move hay bales, equipment, and logs that typically required 2 grown men, and his family naturally leaned on that strength. Away from the fields, it was a different story. School furniture was too small, bus rides were uncomfortable, and he stood out in every crowd, whether he wanted to or not. Teachers later remembered him as an average student who was particularly good at mathematics. But numbers could not change the fact that the world around him simply was not built to his scale. At 14, French education law no longer required him to stay in school, and André decided he had learned enough in the classroom. He joined the workforce as a farmhand and later took manual jobs, including working in a factory that built engines for hay balers day after day. One pattern kept repeating. Employers valued him because of his size and strength. People talked about him because of his size and strength. That is where the shift began. Instead of treating his body as a disadvantage to hide, he started to see that, in the right setting, it might be the very thing that could take him beyond the boundaries of his small village. Break into wrestling. That right setting turned out to be professional wrestling. At around 18, André left the countryside of Seine-et-Marne and moved to Paris. There, he worked as a mover during the day, carrying wardrobes and pianos up tight staircases, and trained at night with local promoter Robert Lejas, who immediately recognized how marketable his size was. Lejas gave him a new identity in the ring, Géant Ferré, which was later adjusted to Jean Ferré, a name inspired by the French folk hero Grand Ferré. André made his television debut in 1966 on French national TV against the much smaller Le Petit Prince. It was a disturbing visual mismatch that made him stand out instantly to viewers. In January 1968, he defeated Franz von Buyten for the FFCP World Heavyweight Championship in Paris, his first major title and a clear signal that he was more than just a novelty act. With France conquered, André's world expanded. He wrestled in the United Kingdom on the World of Sport TV slot, toured Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Africa, and was constantly introduced as some new version of the Giant. In 1970, he debuted in Japan for International Wrestling Enterprise as Monster Roussimoff, wrestling both singles and tag matches and quickly winning the IWA World Tag Team Championship with partner Michael Nador. During that Japanese run, doctors finally told him he had acromegaly, confirming that the same condition filling arenas with paying fans was also putting long-term strain on his heart and joints. André chose to keep going. For the first time in his life, the ring felt like a place where his size was not a problem to solve, but the whole point. Global stardom. When André headed to Montreal in 1971, wrestlers there had never seen anything like him. Promoter Johnny Rougeau put him on top, and he quickly became the main attraction, regularly selling out the Montreal Forum. For a while, it was simple. Announce André the Giant and watch the tickets disappear. Eventually, though, he beat so many local stars that promoters ran out of believable challengers. That is when Vincent J. McMahon in New York stepped in and changed everything. In 1973, McMahon became André's agent and reimagined him as a global special attraction. He tightened up the presentation, billed him from Grenoble in the French Alps, branded him André the Giant, and pushed the nickname Eighth Wonder of the World. André's ring style shifted too. Out went the high drop kicks he had shown in Canada. In came the slower, heavy brawling that made him feel even more like an unstoppable monster. From the mid-70s through the mid-80s, André was booked as a roaming star rather than a regular on any one show. McMahon sent him through territories across the United States, back to Japan, into Mexico, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and even parts of Africa. Posters and magazines pushed his build 7'4", 520-pound frame, and promoters protected that aura by rarely having him lose clean in front of local fans. Signature moments and rivalries. By the mid-70s, André was the measuring stick for every other big man. In New York's Madison Square Garden, he faced giants like Ernie Ladd and Blackjack Mulligan, actual battles of the big men that showed he could go toe-to-toe with opponents who were not dwarfed by him. Those matches helped establish that André was more than a novelty. He was the standard everyone else had to live up to. His most famous early rivalry in the World Wrestling Federation was with Big John Studd. Studd claimed to be the real giant, and with Ken Patera and manager Bobby Heenan, humiliated André on television in 1984 by attacking him and cutting his hair after a tag match. The feud built to the first WrestleMania in 1985, where André and Studd met in a body slam challenge at Madison Square Garden. If André slammed Studd, he would win $15,000. He did. The crowd exploded, and he tossed handfuls of cash to fans before Heenan snatched the bag away. All of that set the stage for Hulk Hogan. The two had met before, but their defining clash came at WrestleMania 3 on 29 March 1987 in the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan. The World Wrestling Federation announced an indoor attendance record of 93,173. Although later analysis puts the real figure closer to 78,000. André came in with a heavily hyped 15-year unbeaten streak. Even though he had lost clean in places like Mexico and Japan earlier in his career, Hogan body-slammed him and retained the world title in a slow, story-driven match that still produced one of wrestling's most iconic images. André's last significant title moment came on network television at the main event in February 1988, where he controversially pinned Hogan after a crooked referee fast counted the fall, then immediately handed the championship to Ted DiBiase, leading to the belt being held up. As his health declined, he moved into tag team action. And just like that, in 1989, he joined Haku as the Colossal Connection under Bobby Heenan. They won the World Tag Team titles from Demolition in December 1989 and lost them back at WrestleMania 6 in 1990, where André finally turned on Heenan and Haku. It was a fitting end to years of stories built around his alliances and betrayals with the Heenan family. Pop culture icon. Even while he was touring the world as a wrestler, André was quietly becoming a presence in television and film. In 1976, he made his United States acting debut on The $6 Million Man, playing the towering Sasquatch in a two-part story called The Secret of Bigfoot. He later popped up in shows such as The Greatest American Hero, BJ and the Bear, The Fall Guy, and a 1990 version of Zorro, usually cast as a monster, enforcer, or larger-than-life figure who barely needed makeup. On the big screen, he had an uncredited but memorable role in Conan the Destroyer as the horned god Dagoth, as well as appearances in Mickey and Maude and the comedy Trading Mom, released after his death. But his most famous film work, and his personal favorite, was Fezzik in The Princess Bride in 1987. Cast as the gentle giant who loves rhymes and hates cruelty, he brought warmth and a quiet sadness to the part. Colleagues later said he loved that on that set, people treated him as an actor first and a curiosity second, and that he would proudly show an advanced tape of the film to wrestling friends and ask what they thought of his performance. Outside of screens, his face became an unlikely art icon. In 1989, artist Shepard Fairey created the André the Giant Has a Posse sticker while at art school, using a stylized image of André's face and his build height and weight. That in-joke grew into the worldwide Obey Giant street art campaign, turning André's likeness into one of the most recognizable images in modern pop culture. Personal life and challenges. But behind the posters and the nicknames, André was living with a serious medical condition. His enormous size came from gigantism and later acromegaly, caused by a tumor on his pituitary gland that flooded his body with growth hormone. Doctors in Japan diagnosed him in his 20s and even offered surgery, but he reportedly turned it down, afraid it would end the career he had just built. The same condition that made him a star also warped his joints, enlarged his organs, and left him in constant pain by the 1980s. That pain fed into another part of his legend, the drinking stories. The HBO documentary and people who knew him stressed that he did not drink massive amounts just for laughs. He drank because, at his size and with that condition, alcohol was one of the few ways he could dull the constant ache long enough to sleep or sit through a flight. Away from the road, he tried to carve out something close to an everyday life on his ranch in Ellerbe, North Carolina, a small town where he could ride an ATV, raise cattle, barbecue, and play cards with friends instead of being stared at every minute. Wrestlers and locals remember him as a quiet host who loved cribbage and long evenings at the table more than loud parties. He did have one child, his daughter Robin, born in 1979. She grew up primarily with her mother, John Christensen, in the United States, and later said she saw her father only a handful of times because of his schedule and lifestyle. In his will, André left his estate to her, making her the sole beneficiary. Later career in decline. After WrestleMania 6 in 1990, André's days as a full-time WWF attraction were effectively over. His body simply could not handle that schedule anymore. From then on, he spent most of his in-ring time in All Japan Pro Wrestling and Mexico's Universal Wrestling Association, usually in multi-man tag matches where he could do less physical work and let partners like Giant Baba carry more of the load. He still appeared occasionally on American television. In September 1992, he showed up for WCW's Clash of the Champions 20th special on TBS, giving a brief interview during a celebration of 20 years of wrestling on the network, more as a respected legend than an active threat. By this point, the contrast with his earlier years was stark. I dived deeper into the reports from his final tours, and guess what? They describe him leaning on the ropes, moving slowly, and relying heavily on crutches or canes outside the ring. Even so, he kept working on select dates. In fact, his last match took place on the 4th of December 1992 in Tokyo for All Japan, teaming with Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura to defeat Haruka Eigen, Masanobu Fuchi, and Motoshi Okuma in a 6-man tag. It was a simple bout, but it closed a career that spanned thousands of matches and more than 2 decades. Death and legacy. In January 1993, André returned to France for a reason that had nothing to do with wrestling. His father had died, and he traveled to attend the funeral near his childhood village. He decided to stay a few extra days in Paris so he could spend time with his mother and old friends. On the night of the 27th of January, he played cards in Moulins, then went back to his room at the Hôtel de la Trémoille. Sometime in the early hours, he died in his sleep from congestive heart failure, likely linked to his untreated acromegaly. He was only 46. His family in France initially planned to bury him near his father, but André's will was clear. He wanted to be cremated and his remains disposed of, not entombed. Local crematoriums were not equipped to handle a body his size, so his remains were flown back to the United States. There he was cremated, and his ashes were scattered over his ranch in Ellerbe, North Carolina, the one place where he had found some peace away from the spotlight. Since then, his legacy has only grown. As the first WWE Hall of Famer, a fixture in multiple wrestling halls of fame, the beloved Fezzik in The Princess Bride, the face of the Obey Giant art campaign, and a constant presence in video games and documentaries, André remains one of the most recognizable figures the industry has ever produced. Wrestlers and fans still talk about him as someone larger than life in every possible sense, and whose impact, like his shadow, stretches far beyond the ring. It's trivia time. We just want to say this straight up. Thank you. All of you who click on our videos, drop comments, argue in the best way possible in the replies, and keep coming back. You're the reason we get to keep doing this. So as a little thank you to our marvelous family, we've put together a quick fun trivia segment on André the Giant. Number 1, wrestlers and fans who met André almost always talk about the same thing first: his handshake. People said it felt like your entire hand vanished inside his palm for a second. Number 2, friends and colleagues have recalled that he could put away an incredible amount of food in one sitting, polishing off meals meant for several people, and then casually asking what was next. Number 3, flying was miserable for him because he barely fit in standard seats and could not comfortably use the tiny bathrooms. People who toured with him said long flights were some of the worst pain he dealt with. Number 4, even his exact height is part of the mystery. Different documents and biographies list him at different figures, anywhere from just over 7 feet to around 7'4", which only adds to the legend. Number 5, despite all the larger-than-life stories, most people who knew him close up remember something simple: a quiet, shy guy who loved card games and making his friends laugh. marvelous verdict. So when you think of Andre the Giant now, what comes to mind first? Maybe it is the idea of a man who could sell out a stadium, then go home to a quiet ranch and a card game with a few close buddies. His life was messy, painful, funny, and huge, just like the man himself. Yet through it all, he kept giving fans moments they still talk about decades later. If his story made you see him as more than just a famous slam at WrestleMania, tell us your favorite Andre memory in the comments. Was it a match, a movie line, or maybe the first time you saw that massive frame on screen? Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep celebrating the legends who made you fall in love with this world in the first place.